Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on which time zone you are. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's IQNet public webinar on the revision of ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ISO 45001. My name is Alex Toikitsoyu, and I have the privilege of serving as president of the IQNet Association. On behalf of our entire IQNet community, thank you for attending and taking time to join us here at this webinar. I'm delighted to see such an extraordinary level of interest. Right now, I think we have over 200 participants and with more than 300 registered from all over the world. That itself demonstrates how important these revisions are for organizations, for certification bodies, consultants, auditors, accreditation bodies, regulators, and everyone involved in management systems. Whether you are joining us from Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas, or elsewhere, thank you for being here. We truly appreciate your participation. Today's webinar comes at a particularly important moment. ISO 9001, 14001, and ISO 45001 are undoubtedly the three most influential management system standards in the world. Together, they represent close to over 90% of all ISO management system certificates issued globally. ISO 9001 accounts for around half of all certifications, while ISO 14001 and 45001 together represent another significant share. So whenever these standards evolved, the impact is enormous. Millions of organizations rely on them to improve quality, environmental performance, and occupational health and safety. Thousands of certification professionals support their implementation, and the entire industry look to these standards as a common language for trust, consistency, and continual improvement. That is why understanding these revisions early is so valuable. Allow me first to say a few words about IQNet. For more than 35 years, IQNet has been bringing together leading certification bodies around the world with one common objective, building trust together. Today, IQNet is the largest international association of cooperating management system certification bodies. Our network includes 39 member organizations operating through more than 320 offices in 79 countries and territories. Collectively, IQNet members issue around 1 out of every 5 management system certificates worldwide, with certifications being delivered in virtually every country around the globe. This global reach gives IQNet a unique perspective. It also brings a responsibility, not only to provide trust certification services, but also to contribute actively to the development and consistent interpretation of international standards. One of the strengths of today's webinar is precisely that many of our speakers are directly involved in the ISO technical committees responsible for developing the standards. They are also not simply reporting on the revisions, they're helping shaping them. Our objectives today is very straightforward. We want to help you understand where the revision projects currently stand, what changes are already becoming clear, what timelines organizations should expect, and perhaps most importantly, how organizations and certifications bodies can start preparing with confidence. Of course, many of the details are still being finalized and some discussions within ISO committees are still ongoing. Today's webinar is therefore not about providing final answers. It's about giving you the most reliable, up-to-date picture available today from experts who are directly involved in the processes. Let me briefly walk you through today's program. We will begin with an overview of the revision projects and the expected transition timelines. After that, we will look specifically at the revision of ISO 14001, both from the perspective of the revision process itself and the practical impact on certified organizations. We will then move to ISO 9001, discuss both the development process and the expected implications for organizations. Next, we will explore the current status of ISO 45001 and the anticipated directions of its revision. And finally, we will conclude with practical considerations for managing the certification transitions before wrapping up with key messages for the day. I believe we have assembled an exceptional panel of speakers, bringing together expertise from ISO technical committees, international standardization, accreditation, and certification. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our today's moderator and also first speaker, Mr. Pedro Alves. Pedro has more than 30 years of international experience in the conformity assessment industry. Since 2013, he has served as Managing Director of IQNet Association and Chief Executive Officer of IQNet Limited. Pedro is widely recognized for his leadership within the international quality infrastructure community. He serves in several important international roles, including Treasurer and Executive Committee members of Global ACI, member of the Advisory Board of the European Cooperation for Accreditation, and member of the ISO Casco Chairman's Policy and Coordination Group, among many other international committees. Few people are better positioned to provide a comprehensive overview of where these revisions projects stand today. Pedro will begin today's program with his presentation, ISO 9001, 14001, and ISO 45001 revision, versions and transition timelines explained. So without further ado, Pedro, I would like to pass the baton to you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for the comprehensive and clear introduction, and also for your kind words. I have both the pleasure and the challenging position of launching the agenda. I hope the information I'm presenting is not irrelevant. Surely most of it is already well known by many of you, but my purpose and my objective and my goal is to provide that information that is relevant for all the presentations, so that we don't need to go over that time and time again, and at the same time launch the discussion and launch the debate, and for this work session, for this webinar, which I hope will be fruitful and interesting for everybody. As Alex said, let's just address a few general informations about the standardization and the transition process. We are dealing, as Alex also mentioned, with the most influential standards for management system implementation and certification and accreditation. These three big ones account for the extraordinary majority of the certificates issued worldwide. And the fact that they are being revised almost at the same time creates synergies and creates opportunities, but at the same time creates some challenges that we hope to address during this webinar. ISO 9001, which is currently in preparing the FDIS, the final draft international standard version. That version, will be submitted to balloting by ISO members in a couple of weeks, on the 9th of July, and we expect publication to happen immediately after, in September or October, immediately after the holiday period here in Europe. It's a 40 years old project. And although this time we are not expecting, and it's not planned to have significant changes, the path that we've been taking over these 40 years is very comprehensive in order to make this the best well-known and the most implemented standard for quality management systems in the world. 40001 is already published, as you know. It was published in April, and it doesn't have such a lifespan so wide as the 9001, but still the second most important standard for management system certification around the world, and already fully implemented and fully in practice, the 2026 version, as I mentioned. 45001 is coming close to the numbers of ISO 14001. It's developed by ISO TC, the Technical Committee 283, a specific group of this committee, Group 6, and it's currently in the draft international standard. So we expect not to have a 2026 version, but to have a 2027 version to be published beginning the first semester of 2027. Regarding 9001, we'll hear Gustavo talking about it, so I will not detail any further. Also, 14001, we will hear René and Mr. Yamada-san on these issues, and also Milos Serasin will talk about the 45,000. So I believe this is the necessary information at this moment. It's also important to notice, and you have this gray box on the left side, that other relevant standards are also being revised in different levels of development. We have the number 5th most important standard, which is ISO 22000, also being revised. We have business continuity management system ISO 22301, a very relevant and a long-standing standard in certification, used in certification as well, also being revised. And we have also asset management standard being revised, 4101, or facility management, but along with others that are not so relevant in the global panorama. But the whole thing means that we are actually in a comprehensive momentum regarding standardization related to conformity assessment, notably related to management system certification. This requires that all interested parties understand and are very, very, very well aware of the transition processes. And since some years ago, accreditation forums like IAF in the past and now Global ACI, I believe you all know, or most of you know, that IAF and ILEC, that were the two biggest accreditation international forums, merged beginning of this year and resulted on Global ACI organization. And Global ACI took the responsibility to establish the transition disposition, especially or notably when the standard support certification of management systems included in the MLA or the MRA, the multilateral or recognition agreements around the world. So for those schemes who are endorsed by Global ACI and included in the global MRA, in the global recognition proceedings of Global ACI, there's an effort to establish the transition requirements. And those transition requirements follow, in general, the approach that is presented in the slide. This is a 3 years approach. It's not general. It's not the only approach. Whenever changes are not very comprehensive, whenever the transition can be simplified, we may have a 2-year transition plan, for example. But we will see that at least for 9001 and 45001 and 9001 and 14001, the transition plan includes this 3-year scheduling. Okay, this 3-year scheduling starts with the publication of the revised standard, and in order to harmonize, ISO since some time now does not have a strict date for the publication. It's not the 14th of April, for example, for ISO 14001. It's considered to be the last day of the month of publication. So this way, everybody can have the same criteria, and it starts in a proper way, and it's defined in a proper way. So the last day of the month of the publication of the revised standard is the start of the transition plan. Okay, we expect within 6 months for that date, at least. It can occur earlier, and unfortunately can occur later as well. But we expect that the ABs, the accreditation bodies, are ready to assess and support and accredited certification bodies. So 6 months following the last day of publication of the international standard. We expect that 9 months on that date, the CBs are ready to be audited and certified, and can communicate with their accreditation bodies that they are ready to be evaluated, at least 9 months after the publication of the international standard. And we expect that 12 months, 1 year following the publication of the international standard, the certification bodies are all transitioned to the new version by the accreditation bodies. So we expect that at least 1 year after the publication of the international standard, all certification bodies, those who are willing and interested in certifying according to the new standard, are duly accredited. 1 year and a half, so 6 months after this date, 1 year and a half after the publication of the international standards, no more new certifications will be conducted according to the old version. All new certifications will be conducted according to the new version only. So that 3 years following the publication of the international standard, all valid certificates are according to the new version. Those certificates who are not according to the new version, who were not issued or did not transition to the new version, they will lose their validity. They will be terminated. They no longer be valid. As I said, the extension and the nature of the transition dispositions depends on each case. In this case, the 3 years transition period for ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 2026 versions was not established due to the extent review and changes in the standards, but mainly, and we'll talk about those changes in a few moments, or the extension of that revision in a few moments. But the 3 years were established mainly due to the volume, to the comprehensive volume of certificates that need to be transitioned. So considering that millions of organizations are certified according to 9001 and 14001, certainly more than 1 million, it is required an extended period of time to allow transition for the involved organizations. Also, for this transition, the process is considered to be simplified in most cases. The certification body needs to evaluate the impact and needs to provide a transition plan and supporting documentation to the accreditation body for the accreditation body to proceed with evaluation and proceed with transitioning the accreditation. There will be transition proceedings communicated to the market and to the certified clients, and this should be done in due time in order to allow everybody, every interested party, to be duly informed and to take actions in due time. This doesn't mean that everybody follows this pattern or this process. There may be extraordinary circumstances where, based on risk, both accreditation bodies and certification bodies will have different approaches. Okay, but those will be, like I said, extraordinary situations, under extraordinary circumstances, and based on risk. We will understand a bit more about the certification dispositions with Bruno at the end of the webinar. And again, these are supposed to be normal or usual or common or most probable dispositions. Again, they can be changed based on risk by the involved accreditation bodies or certification bodies. Any change is a moment for acknowledging risks or threats and opportunities. Every change, notably in such an important standard, such important and influential standards, should be treated in accordance with this importance by the certification bodies and the accreditation bodies, the certified companies, the consultants, the trainers, and everybody involved, the scheme owners, everybody who uses ISO 9001 to deliver a service or to implement a management system for their benefit. And we also identified some risks, but also some opportunities from our point of view, from the point of view of the certification bodies. It doesn't, I'm not characterizing these risks, the magnitude of these risks or the criticality of these risks, nor am I identifying if it's hard to address or mitigate or eliminate or not. They're just risks that in a level or another have to be addressed by certification bodies, by clients, and by the market when it comes to the changes and to the revision of the management system standards like 9001 and 40001. Risks include auditor inconsistency due to different interpretation. Risks include client misunderstanding the changes and eventually implementing the changes in the superficial or inadequate way. For example, that the changes may induce revision of documentation, but not revision of processes or systems. They may happen that accreditation and certification may not be available in due time due to delays. That's also a risk that we have to address. It may happen that certification bodies may not achieve accreditation transition in that 1 year period that I showed before. It may occur that certified clients, already currently certified clients to the previous versions of the standards, fail to transition in due time. It may include additional costs regarding auditing, regarding accreditation, regarding issuing of new certificates, regarding training and providing competence and skills, regarding consultancy for the company. So it may and will most probably include or add additional costs to the certification process and to the implementation process. It may lead to the accumulation of transition audits at the end of the period. We know that clients and organizations may want to have as much time as possible to implement the changes, regardless if they are comprehensive or not, and delay the transition audit. This is not the first time for most of us. So measures will be taken in order to allow a distribution of audits during the transition period to avoid last minute calls and last minute problems that may induce problems and difficulties for the transition of certified clients. And then there's also to be considered the time to change. Although, again, the changes in the requirements may not be substantial, the simple change of a version may induce changes in the ERP or in the CRM or in the any IT solution that the certification body and accreditation body may induce changes in databases, may induce implementation and time to change regarding competence and qualification of auditors, etc., and other personnel. So time to change is a threat and should be looked and mitigated. But there's also opportunities. Okay, the certification bodies will have to provide the appropriate skills and knowledge to the auditors, and so although again the changes are not substantial, we may use this opportunity to promote auditor calibration in other issues. Sometimes we're just waiting for the good opportunity to do a training or to do a work session or a webinar on different issues related to certification, and this could be a good motive. This could be a good trigger for that improvement and improving audit calibration and skills development. Also for the processes, sometimes there are changes that the certification bodies are waiting to introduce in their document management system documentation and service documentation, for example, in contracts with the clients, and the clients, there are changes they long are waiting for a long time for the right opportunity to include in their process documentation, and this could be the trigger. This could be the moment to make use of this moment, of this opportunity to include improvements and change more than what is just required by the revised standard. And finally, for the certification body, this is a very good opportunity to strengthening our broad brand position. certification bodies will be measured, they will be evaluated, they will be recognized by how they communicate with the market, on how they assist their clients in understanding the transition and scheduling and planning and conducting the transition audits and taking the decision in due time. Having transparent policies for the transition process, again, will help the market understand that when they deal with a certification body that, for example, is a member of IQNet, they are dealing with a concern, a trustworthy service provider. We long, and Alex just mentioned that we are supporting the quality infrastructure around the world. The quality infrastructure that includes accreditation, certification, metrology, includes regulators, includes financing entities, includes standardization bodies and conformity assessment bodies, as I mentioned. And we are for a long time, we have this strategic focus on supporting and contributing to the quality infrastructure around the world. IQNet is present in more than 40 different entities, being an entity, a committee, or a working group of ISO, or a stakeholders advisory group for a scheme owner, or an accreditation forum committee. We are members of, we are A liaison members of ISO since 2001, and we are members of the accreditation forums, AIEF, and now Global ACI since 2010. And we assume not just a passive participation. We have a strong commitment and support to our delegates and our liaison officers to have leadership positions within these 40 different forums, international forums. Alex, for example, our dearest president, is the co-convener of the Global ACI Technical Committee 3, ICTDS, so Information Communication and Technologies and Data Security Working Group, and he's also the co-convener of the ACT Task Force, the AI applicable to conformity assessment task force. I'm personally a member of the Global ACI Executive Committee. I was appointed treasurer, and I'm a non-voting member of the Executive Committee of Global ACI. I'm still a member of IAF, although IAF now merged with ILEC that resulted in Global ACI. IAF still exists to take care of the assets, the brand, the documents. It's not easy to change references to IAF mandatory documents or to change the logo and the branding around the world. It's not easy to do that in 6 months. So we are expecting a transition period between the two organizations, and I'm also part of that process. I'm also part of the ISO CASCO, which is the Conformity Assessment Committee in ISO, the dedicated committee for conformity assessment. I'm also a member of the Chairman's Policy and Coordination Group, which is the top-level management committee within CASCO. Alex is the president of INET QI, and Tatiana Gross-Klauser, it's our business developer manager, is also taking care of the general secretariat of INET QI. INET QI is an informal organization of quality infrastructure entities looking to develop the quality infrastructure around the world. We have the World Bank, we have UNIDO, we have IQNet and other trade associations, we have ISO, we have the World Trade Organization, we have metrology and lab dedicated organizations, international organizations. So it's a top level structure, the highest level organization in the world regarding the promotion of quality infrastructure. And we have the presidency and the secretariat for this mandate. And I'm also a member of the EA advisory board along with other IQNet representatives. So EA, the European accreditation. Then we have a mirror committees within IQNet to replicate the discussions, to progress, to further on the discussions. We have committees dedicated to harmonization and best practices. Gustavo, that you will hear today, is the the chair of the harmonization committee, which is our technical committee, and we also address institutional relations and partnerships through our Committee on Constitution and Policy and our Board of Directors. So we have a very strong focus on the quality infrastructure and contributing and further developing the quality infrastructure, and transition of standards is just a part of that effort. You will listen today to all delegates and to the different committees that are responsible for developing the standards, we have a comprehensive plan on the transition and on the new standards. We promote technical debate within the network and outside the network. Today is just a mere example. Through organizing work sessions and public webinars, we have developed consensus documents. It's like a white paper on harmonization and dissemination of best practices regarding the transition, so our members have a clear guideline, a clear guidance on how to implement those global ACI directives. And those global ACI requirements for the transition that I presented, they are not very detailed. They do not go too much into practice. They say the what, but they don't, and the why, but they don't tell you the how. And that's what we try to do with this consensus document and the discussions that around it. We participate in external events on related topics. We have training courses for involved personnel of our members, and we produce market and communication materials such as flyers, white papers, and other material that will help our members and the market better understand the transition and the dispositions for an effective transition. And this is all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alex.
Thank you very much, Pedro. And before I turn over the moderation of the webinar to you, I would like first to open the floor for some questions. And here I would like to have the assistance of our colleague from the head office, Tatiana, to see if we have any questions either in the chat or directly from the participants.
We already have one question for Pedro. For an organization certified to multiple standards, will it actually be possible to conduct one single integrated transition audit?
Yes, absolutely. One of the most important constraints or the relevant constraints for an integrated transition audit to be planned is the timeline. So the transition frame, the time frameworks or time frames will somehow be overlapping in a particular period of time. And when they overlap in that period of time, we will be able to conduct integrated transitions. So it will be easier to conduct an integrated transition audit for those organizations who are certified ISO 9001 and ISO 40001. For those who have a triple certification, including health and safety, the time frame, the opportunity window will be shorter. What I duly advise is for those organizations who are interested in conducting that integrated audit, transition audit, to contact your certification body as soon as possible. Make them aware that you have that interest. I'm pretty sure they also are aware that you are, for example, certified for 3 systems or 2 systems, management systems, and they will also have a look into how they can better help you and assist you in planning and scheduling the audit. But if you have that need and interest, please consider contacting your certification bodies as soon as possible, at the earliest opportunity, and work with them in planning that transition audit. But the answer is yes. If the transition window allows, yes, it's possible to conduct an integrated transition audit.
We have a second question for you, Pedro. why can't I find in the global ACI directive document for the ISO 14001 transition?
The transition of 14001 and 9001 are currently being balloted. So it took some time. The global ACI started beginning of this year. The first General Assembly that actually confirmed the structure and the proceedings and the new organization was mid of April in Prague. And so the whole process could not meet the exact publication of ISO 14001. It's defined, has been discussed. It's now under approval. I would expect to have it mid of July, perhaps, a publication of the transition for ISO 14001, but also for 9001 in anticipation. Okay, with 14001, there was a slight delay from global ACI, but we are looking forward to anticipate the transition for 9001. So when the international standard is published, everybody already knows the transition dispositions that are similar to what the ones that I just presented. So just wait to be patient a little bit. They will be presented soon.
Thank you so much. Next question. Can a transition audit be conducted remotely?
Okay, that's also a very good question. Thanks a million. You know that certification bodies have a program of the certification cycle. The certification bodies have planned all activities within the cycle from the beginning. And these activities, like surveillance audits and the content of the planning of surveillance audits, what to see, the duration, if there's a multi-site, what sites to look in, is planned from the beginning, okay? And then is updated as we go along the way. If in that program, a remote audit is already planned, is already programmed, I see no reason why, and that audit is used to conduct the transition, to support the transition. So that audit, if it's a surveillance or a certification, transforms itself in a transition audit. If it's already programmed, I see no problem. I see no concern in conducting it remote. I also believe that if that can be extraordinary situations that promote remote auditing, like for any other audit. So yes, if a remote audit is planned or considered in the cycle, it can be used for transition as well.
Thank you. Next challenge is, what are the key challenges organizations face in maintaining ISO certification within an integrated management system while implementing upgrades to multiple ISO management system standards? And what are the best practices to manage them effectively?
Yes, that's a $1 million question right there. Perhaps will take us a whole webinar, a different webinar to address. And we still have to understand and listen to the different presentations of today in order to have a clear view of the changes and the impact of those changes. I believe that this is probably a question that we can answer later on, and even address this challenge in the global forums like global ACI or even within Casco and other organizations, because it's relevant for the market to understand what are the degrees of freedom, what are the best guidance, especially when conducting integrated management system transition and implementation and certification. So yes, I'll take that in consideration as well.
Thank you. And last question, shortly before moving to the next speaker, when is ISO 9001-2026 expected to be published?
Okay, as I mentioned, the ballot for the final draft will start 9th of July. It will take over, I believe, I'm not sure but if it's 30, 45, or 60 days, but anyway, we can expect the publication of the international document 9001/2026, I believe mid of September onwards, not later than October. Now it's my turn to introduce René, my dearest colleague and friend. René has been a distinguished management professional and with a distinguished management and professional experience for over 35 years. He has a deep expertise across manufacturing, across service industries, international certifications network, including SQS, the Swiss partner of IQNet, and IQNet itself. He has worked globally with organizations of all sizes and has a comprehensive audit and peer assessment expertise in multiple technical areas or sectors. His background includes a decade in the industry, international trade and financial services, alongside with deep specialization and knowledge of quality infrastructure, conformity assessment, compliance, and international standardization. René has held key leadership roles in SQS as an executive board and deputy CEO. He's a long-term head of accreditation and international relations. He was a long time member of the head of accreditation and international relations, SQS, and he was also a president of IQNet. Currently, he's the founder of Conformity and Governance Limited and serves as chairman of the Swiss Standards Committee, SNV, on environmental sustainability, circular economy, and sustainable finance. It's really a pleasure, René, to bring you to this webinar, and thank you for accepting our invitation and to address the 14001 and its development. Thank you, René.
Thank you, Pedro, for the introduction, but also for your insight in important conformity assessment processes already and answering really clever questions. And a warm welcome to all the participants. It's my pleasure. Let me just move forward the slides here. It's my pleasure to talk about the revision process 14001 and especially the key changes. I believe it's important because this standard is published to give an understanding what these changes are. I carefully listened before to all these transition issues and the questions here, how should we do now with all this? And here we have really good insight to see what the changes are. I will give you some pre-information why the standard was changed in order to better understand, and then you will see the changes, you will see the highlights, and this will help you really to manage the implementation. Pedro talked about efficient transition. I would say this part of the webinar should also help for efficient implementation by better understanding the concepts, the requirements, and the intent behind the requirement. That's always important. Let me, before I move to the next slide, just let us ask the question, why this revision of ISO 14000 is made? By the way, it's the 4th edition. For persons which may not be aware, the first edition was came out in 1996. So we are in the 4th edition now. I would say it's a highly mature standard, and as Pedro and Alex already informed, it's a second important standard when we look from the certification perspective. So why the revision was made? First of all, formal point, every ISO management system standard needs to be reviewed anyway, not later than 5 years after implementation. This is just to update and keep pace and to stay relevant. The second point is already more important, I believe. The 3rd edition, also the last edition, was launched in 2015. My dear friends, it's 11 years since we had the last standard. So what happens? Climate and, or let me say, in 11 years' time, business and business landscape is changing. So, for instance, climate, natural risks, supply chain expectations, regulatory requirements, all and even more are evolving. So by a revision of ISO 14001 or the 14001-26 now. This is an updated revision of this world's most widely used environmental management standard. And that was made in order to keep pace with changing environmental conditions. This is important, as I said, because the standard has to fit the context and finally also business requirements in the supply chain. That's more the formal part. If we look, just to understand before I go into the formal process and the changes and so on, what does an environmental management intend to achieve? So we want to have the same picture about this. So put you in the context before we talk about the changes. A key outcome of an environmental management system is to provide value. That's on the top. And for whom? It's for the environment, it's for the organization itself, and it's for its interested parties. And what means providing value? Providing value means finally, let me say, contribute to the environmental pillar to sustainability, but in a practical manner, to use a systematic approach to protect the environment by the way activities, products, and services of an organization are designed, executed, or delivered, and the way they consider or take into account environmental conditions. So that's really a key, and we will see that also in the changes, that exactly in this point, the requirements were clarified. What we mean by these environmental conditions and what it encompasses. This, from a standards point of view, links to a term where we say intended outcome of an environmental management system. So that's the real focus points. And intended outcome, what you as a user of the standard really need to ensure and achieve is performance, so environmental performance, is compliance obligations, and this is not just laws and regulations. This goes to interested parties, to relevant requirements to which an organization subscribes, and it's fulfilling of objectives and commitments. These are the three key points. It's about value and it's about intended outcome. As a conclusion, if we take that to the revision, a management system standard or the 14001-26 has to be clear for users. Also, the understanding of requirements and the way these apply. The way these apply, we will find a lot of information in the updated information in the so-called informative annex. I come back to that. And a conclusion is also the standard has to be relevant. So it means it addresses the right topic. Finally, also, it has to be for the users, the standard has to be flexible. The standard has not to tell to the organization always very exactly how you should do it. If you understand the requirement, there are always different ways to find the solution. I say this because this is very important, because otherwise, in my presentation, you will only look at the changes and then ask you how I am doing that. So this is a little bit the reason, the motivation, the purpose of the change. Now we move the slides. Each revision needs a clear direction. In particular, this means you need to know the focus points, the limits, and operational instruction. I do not mean you, but it means the working group, the experts which are responsible to make the revision. And here we have three inputs. The inputs here, which is the frame for the working group, is to keep a holistic approach. That means, with other words, these environmental conditions, the important parts, have to be inside. They have to have a broad view about environmental aspects I'm managing. The second point, the standard needs to be clear and comprehensible, as I said already, for the users. They need to understand the wording, the clarity, it should not be ambiguous, and so on. And the third directive is the harmonized structure. You know that there is a harmonized structure, management system standards follow the same concepts, titles, and so on and so on. So these are the inputs, and this is the direction set by ISO for the working group doing the revision. Just a small look, the journey, the process to revise 14,001 and to come up with the revision 2026 is a 2.5 years journey. I do not talk about the stages. This is according to an ISO process, very clear process with clear principles, also where you could find the detailed requirements, how to develop in so-called ISO directives, freely visible on the ISO's website. But it goes through different stages and so on, you can see that. And these 2.5 years took us through a lot of meetings, quite a lot also face-to-face. Here it is to say that the face-to-face meetings were always hybrid meeting opportunities. Because, of course, also ISO does not want just to produce CO2 and it goes to contribute to climate mitigation, climate change risk and so on, or climate resilience, or whatever you want to call it. And the meetings, the face-to-face meetings were in Munich, in San Diego, in Bern, Switzerland, in Tokyo, and finally in Toronto. So 25 meeting days face-to-face. And I tell you, the group, if I include the virtual participation, it's almost around 40 participants. If it was around or part of a general assembly of a yearly meeting of the technical committee, it was up to 70 participants, a very broad interest in this project. There were additional virtual meetings just to move on, just to resolve the comments. There were a lot of comments, and you see we had only in the CD, this is the committee draft, and finally in the draft international standards, that's where really the comments have to be resolved by one-to-one. So it's 950 comments had to be resolved. I think we'll not go further in the details, but this gives you a little bit an insight about the participation, the process, and the importance given to that. Key changes. I think this is of high interest. I will here talk about main changes as an overall, just an overall overview, and then really a focus. What are the 5 new requirements? And then there are even important clarification highlights. Why I say that? Do not just focus as a user on the 5 changes. The big value is on the clarification highlights. And that's exactly the point where I'm saying, please have a look what these points are. Read the requirements. Maybe there is a new note clarifying something, maybe very relevant, because you may not have understood this requirement that way. So this helps you. If still you have questions, look in the annex. The annex was completely reworked, and the annex tells you what is it about and how could this requirement apply. So it gives you very good insight that you can take action and plan your readiness to be in conformity with the new edition. That's important. Now we have a look on that. The main change is general. I would a little bit say that's the general changes. It's the language and the structure. We have to follow in each revision the harmonized structure, and the harmonized structure, I would say every 1 to 2 or 3 years, they introduce smaller or more important changes. So here we have no choice. We have to take that, and in order to, of course, in order also to support the integrated use with other management system. Then there were few editorial terminology updates. So just to give you an example, we had in the early standard, meet compliance obligations. And here the group decided to say, no, it's meet compliance obligations is much more appropriate versus fulfilling compliance obligations. So sometimes very small points. But anyway, here also, this can be seen in the annex of the standard if further information for clarification is needed. Then we have a point, issues potentially relevant to the environmental management system. This addresses the context clauses as a 4.2, where you really look what is relevant. And now here we have exactly what I said at the beginning, these environmental conditions. The link and really the awareness, you have to consider environmental conditions when you start to plan, when you start to define environmental aspects. And here we have further points. We have, as pollution level, we have more concrete climate change. That was already addressed by an amendment in 2024. It's now integrated, but we have new biodiversity, ecosystem health, resource availability. I just draw your attention. This is not that you need to have a biodiversity management system inside 40,001 or let me say, a resource availability, a circular economy system inside 14,001. But this is just to be aware, is among your interested parties relevant requirements. Is there any requirement coming up, and do you want to adhere that, and do you want to integrate that in your planning, in your commitments and your processes? But you have to analyze that. You cannot just say, oh, I like it or I like it not. You have really to be aware when you go through interested parties and so on, and what is relevant, what is coming up, to look at this point in order also, in case of a certification, to be able to demonstrate that. And then we have a life cycle perspective. It was already in, but it was not so clear. And always when I talk, it was not so clear. I should have told to you in the design specification, also the directions, the 3 directions I gave you. This is not just in free invention. There was a large user survey in the ISO 14000 user communities, and a lot of impacts were used and analyzed. And one is that it is not so clear how to use the life cycle perspective. So here what is clarified is, first of all, that there are nodes, for instance, in 612, and it clarifies what the life cycle stages are. And it clarifies also that you have in each life cycle, for each life cycle stages, to consider environmental aspects and potential impacts. So you cannot just do it in general, say, yes, I looked at life cycle. It has to focus on life cycle stages. So it impacts the planning, 612, but also it impacts the commitments you make in an environmental policy, for instance. So in the clause 5, there is another note which is quite similar, what the importance and the aspects of the life cycle perspective, let me say, consideration involves. And then the last point to this general view is the externally provided products, services and processes. There is a new requirement because now it extends, and you will see that on the next slide. I will not go here in the details. Now we have the formal look what are really considered as 5 new requirements. And I split that really a little bit because probably accreditation bodies look really, okay, here is new requirements. Formally, please tell me how you address this in your system. One is there is a new clause on change management. It's on clause 6.3. The point is change and managing change in a systematic manner was only addressed in clause 8.1. So it only related to operational processes, to operations. But now it refers to general overall all organizational changes which can happen, and they have to be treated in a systematic manner. Why? In order to keep the integrity of the management system. So not through change that suddenly other parts of the system will not anymore be effective and so on. That's why this was placed new in 6.3. Then the externally provided product, services and processes relates to clause 8. That's an extension. It's not just as before said, it relates to outsourced processes. It relates now to products, services and processes. So things you can, let me say, outsource, the term is not anymore used. It's externally provided. And you have to consider that because it links to the level of control you will apply. And the level of control you will apply, it's up to the organization and it's not up to the certification body, but it has to be appropriate. Then we have two changes related to internal audit programs and objectives. So first of all, the determination of an audit objective has been added. So if you have an audit or an internal audit, let's say this way in your system as a user, be careful that you clarify somewhere in an audit plan or whatever that the audit objective is clear. And then the audit program, that's how you take your responsibility as a user about the effectiveness of the system, for instance, by doing internal audits over a certain time, for instance, 3 years, how you cover all the relevant points of the standard. And that's the audit program, and that needs to be available as documented information. This is new. And the last point, the management review has input factors to consider. So it tells you exactly what kind of information, what kind of topic area you have to use as input for evaluation. And this is the bullet points A to G. They were there before, but now they are mandatory. They are not just you can do it, you can use that. Now you have to really verify that your management review gives the input to these points A to G. We go to the clarification highlights. Maybe do not go in too many details now. It's on the holistic focus on the environment. The key here is that in your context analysis, you take into account these environmental condition areas, natural resources, climate change, biodiversity, ecosystem health, pollution level. You may ask, what is ecosystem health? Look in the annex. Wonderful explanation what it is, and you will understand what to do. And then here also you can see where you find this note and so on. Then the next point, clarified risks and opportunities. That's especially to shorten it, the clauses were reordered. And why were they reordered? That's a clause 6 made a lot of problem in the application in the way it was perceived. And people did sometimes not understand what do they need to consider when they make a determination of risks and opportunities. And that was really clarified. It's more than just environmental aspects. It's also the compliance obligations, and what is written in clause 612, so aspect 612, 613, I think it's compliance obligation, and 614. So you have to be aware of this as well, because otherwise, if you do not do, it could be substantial wake point. Then you could miss something that could lead to not complete risks and opportunity analysis or determination, which finally could lead to lack that the environmental management system can achieve its intended outcome. And then clarified life cycle perspective, we talked already, and then merged clauses 10, that's just, we would say it's more editorial. Try to move, try once more. Okay, there is some more in a quick run. A3 means the annex, and 3 means to the clause 3. So the annex relates always to the clause in the main body of the standard. It's about outcome and intended outcome. It's what it means, what exactly externally provided process product services means. It's the consideration of interconnected environmental conditions, a very important part. It relates to clause 4. It's interested parties, relevant topics. It's about key components of an ecosystem and what ecosystem health involves. It's about environmental aspect determination and what it involves, and especially the life cycle perspective, how to apply. It's the broader context to be considered when determining risks and opportunities, and it's the EMS ability to achieve intended outcomes. So this is a kind of guidance, and this is a picture. We do not go through in the details. This is just the outcome. It's just a summary of everything I told you. The red part are the red bullet points. The pink part, you see the numbered bullet points on the left side. So you see exactly the same keywords. For instance, the change management in the red part, the externally provided process, products and services, the audit objectives, and so on. So it gives you a picture where these highlights or required clarification highlights or new requirements are placed in the standard. And in the middle, in the gray ones, also we have things which is the policy, environmental policy definition, risk term removed from clause 3, documented information phrases aligned to the high-level structure, and so on. So it's a little bit like a roadmap to find and to give a nice overview where these changes and highlights are. I think there is no need to go through the details, but this can be useful when you train auditors and so on. What is the conclusion? Let me move on here. Final conclusion of all this work of 2.5 years. You see here, first of all, a picture from the final meeting, 29th October 2025 in Toronto. It was in connection with the annual meeting of the Technical Committee 207. The conclusion is actually is in principle when you say the standard has to keep pace with all these changes going on. And I believe that's very important for a standard which is so widely used. It's used also for certification, for conformity assessment in supply chain and so on, to have a standard which stays relevant, which is better understandable, which adds for clarity and support for users. And I can say it's a great work done. You have seen how many meetings, how many days, and I believe it's a good standard, a relevant standard, and probably, or I'm convinced, this standard will help users in a much better way to work efficiently and to make an efficient and effective implementation. Thank you very much.
So one open question is about the term outsourced, which has been deleted from the definitions in clause 3. And the question is why?
Because this term is not anymore used in the clause 8. Because this expansion to products, processes and services is now with the wording, the terminologies, it's something which is from externally provided and outsourced. That was a year-long term, coming a little bit up from the first 2 versions of 14001 or even from other standards like ISO 9001. You outsource something, you delegate it to someone else. But the more popular and modern term is, of course, if something is provided by someone else in your system where you are responsible. That's why the group decided to change this terminology. And finally, if a word is not anymore used in the standard, it's deleted from the definition part.
Okay.
Thank you. Another question, if there is an integrated system, is it still necessary to have separate objectives for environmental management, or can there be a single document with integrated objectives for the systems related to the integrated system?
Do you mean, that's a little bit my question, checklist? It could be that the person who asked this question relates to internal auditing. I'm not sure now, it's so quiet, because what is the checklist related to? Also, I mean, of course, I would say if it's related to internal audit, of course, you do not need to have separate checklist. You know, what is the objective? The objective is that an organization which makes internal audit is responsible to see that the system works correctly, that intended from the standard intended or from your system let me say, determined processes are correctly applied and the system can work effectively. Whatever, if you use, you must use criteria, that's clear. In which form, or integrated or not integrated, that's okay. You must be specific enough that your audit outcome, your internal audit outcome, is appropriate in terms of effectiveness of relevance you can demonstrate. So you should not have only generic questions. Somewhere you need to be specific, even you use an integrated checklist.
René, I think the question was also addressing objectives. Are the objectives for the environmental system, do they need to be in a separate document, or can they be integrated if you have an integrated management systems with quality objectives and health and safety objectives? Do we need an independent document for environmental objectives, or can you integrate all the objectives in one document?
You can integrate 3 words as an answer.
Obviously. Good. Thank you again, René. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Mamoru Yamada-san. Yamada-san has over 30 years of experience in environmental management and corporate auditing. He began his career at Secomco Limited in 1992 and later earned a master from the University of Michigan in 2003, specializing in greenhouse gas reduction strategies. In 2010, he joined the Japan Quality Assurance Organization, JQA, a proud member of IQNet, where he was served as senior manager of environmental assessment department since 2017. Currently, Yamada-san leads ISO 40001 audit operations and serves as the official IQNet liaison to the Technical Committee 2007, the Subcommittee 1 that develops the 40001 standard. He also trains ISO 40001 auditors and delivers seminars on climate change, carbon neutrality, and sustainability. Yamada-san, it's a it's a big pleasure for us to have you here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you very much for a kind introduction. My name is Mamoru Yamada, and I served as the IQNet official liaison. Today, I represent the impact of the ISO 14001 revision on certified organization. Okay. Let me briefly introduce myself. My professional background includes electrical engineering and environmental management. After working at Secom Corporation in Japan, I joined JQA in 2010 and have been involved in ISO 40001 auditing ever since. In 2017, I stepped into my current role managing environmental assessment operations. In addition, I have been serving as the IQNet liaison since 2021. In these roles, I have seen many organizations implement ISO 40001. This is my first message. The newly updated ISO 40001 was released this April, 30 years after its first edition in 1996. This revision seems not a major changes like the 2015 edition. It looks like a simple update. However, the organization should make the best of use of it as an excellent opportunity to brush up ISO activities. The key is sustainability, including environmental conditions, life cycle, and supply chain management. I hope this presentation helps all organizations enhance their sustainability. Today's presentation is divided into two parts. First, I'll provide a brief overview of 2026 edition. However, I'll briefly go over the first part because it partly overlaps with Mr. Rain's just covered. Following that, I'll present the practical impact on certified organizations, focusing on how this revision can be effectively applied. As we go through, I encourage you to consider how these insights apply to your organization. Let's begin with a short overview of 2026 edition. This slide explains the background of this revision. The revision process was influenced by update to Annex SL and emerging environmental topics, such as climate change. Although the 2020 review cycle was skipped, discussion resumed to align with new global expectations. The goal was to clarify requirements while incorporating sustainability-related topics. The revision process was driven by three key perspectives. First, incorporating changes from Annex SL. Second, strengthening environmental topics, such as climate change and circular economy, applying ISO 40002. Third, clarifying requirements without adding new ones, mainly by rewording and additional notes. With this foundation in mind, let me now take a closer look at the specific topics emphasized in this revision and how this issue will impact on the organization. This revision highlights 5 key points in terms of the impact of the organization. The 5 key points include environmental conditions, life cycle perspective, external communication, change management, and supply chain management. All of these are closely related to sustainability. In this presentation, I'll explain how each of these 5 points impact the organization. Now, let's move on to part 2, the impact on certified organization. As I mentioned previously slide, this revision seems no major changes. Some may think it can be handled easily. However, this revision could realize an excellent opportunity to brush up ISO activities. Simply put, this is the organization's opportunity to upgrade the organization for future challenges and social expectations. As you can see on the slide, the 2026 edition highlights 5 key areas for organizations looking to strengthen their sustainability. Starting from the next slide, I'll explain in detail how we can translate each of these 5 points into specific actions. By understanding the intent behind each point and applying it effectively, the organization built a stronger foundation for sustainability. First, let's start by looking at the 5 key points. Environmental conditions. This content has been newly added to Annex A41 in the new 2026 edition. This upgrade expands the scope of environmental conditions to include factors such as resource availability and climate change. Specifically, regarding climate change, analyzing the risk and opportunities tied to an organization's activities, product, and services is expected to drive the development of new initiatives. Climate change is deeply impacting business operations. For example, declining raw material quality and yield threaten supply stability. Drought causes water shortage that disrupt production. Extremely weather like flood disrupt supply chain, and coastal facilities face higher risks. For workers, rising temperatures lower efficiency and increase heat stroke risks. In short, climate change is a critical risk to supply chain, people, and infrastructure, demanding proactive adaptation. To turn these risks into opportunities, we need to focus on the following perspectives. First, companies need to reflect environmental impact in their management system, including how climate change affects the organization and how the organization impacts the environment. Next, it is important to analyze climate-related risks and opportunities, not only as challenges, but also as drivers for new business models and innovation. For example, one company created high-performance insulation to meet strict energy standards. This increased their sales and helped reduce carbon. Another example is a clothing company. They made new sportswear that dries fast and stay comfortable. This was a great fix for rising temperatures, and it quickly increased demand. In summary, climate change is not only a risk, but also a business opportunity, and companies should actively discover innovation and adaptation to create value. The next topic includes tips for supply chain management initiatives from a life cycle perspective. This is a requirement of 612 environmental aspect from 2026 edition. This demonstrates identifying environmental aspect while considering a life cycle perspective. A life cycle perspective includes a wide range of activities. It naturally aligns with and corresponds to the item of Scope 3, which allows many companies to strengthen their supply chain. This slide illustrates the relationship between the supply chain and Scope 3. As shown here, the supply chain covers the entire life cycle, including raw material procurement, design, production, delivery, use, and end-of-life stages. These life cycle-based supply chains, from upstream to downstream, directly align with Scope 3. This revision strengthens the life cycle perspective. By enhancing this view, companies can successfully improve their supply chain management. Therefore, managing Scope 3 is critical for understanding and reducing overall environmental impact. Let's take a look at a specific example of the manufacturing industry. For example, in the raw material stage, companies focus on using recycled materials and ensuring supplier compliance. In the design stage, they reduce product weight and improve durability to expand the product life. During product production and delivery, effort including improving material efficiency and optimizing transportation route. At the end of life stage, designing products for easy disassembly and proper waste separation plays a key role. These examples show how action across the entire life cycle contribute to Scope 3 management, which is expected to effectively lead to activities triggered by this revision. Alright, next move on to the next topic. The next topic includes sustainability reporting. Annex A74 indicates the requirement for external communication to disclose environmental and sustainability information continues to grow. In addition, disclosing sustainability information will be mandatory for the organization. So, the external communication requirement for disclosing environmental and sustainability information are showing an ever-increasing trend. This slide indicates the global trend in sustainability-related disclosure. Internationally, sustainability disclosure has been moving rapidly from a voluntary best practice to a formal standardized requirement. In Europe, CSRD and ESRS continue to play a major role for sustainability reporting, along with CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project. For your information, in the case of Japan, the Financial Service Agency has issued an announcement on the disclosure of corporate sustainability initiatives in security reports. This is significant because it signals that sustainability information is no longer supplementary. This trend is reinforced by the SSBJ, the Sustainability Standards Board of Japan, which is become mandatory from March 2027. This trend will have a significant impact on all businesses, including small and medium-sized enterprises. The impact includes disclosure of sustainable information at the same level as financial data, their scope of EMS, and supply chain management. To sum up, sustainability disclosure is rapidly becoming mainstream worldwide, and it will reshape how organizations manage and communicate this environmental performance. All right, let's move on to the next topic, change management. Clause 6.3, planning of changes, has been newly introduced in the 2026 edition, although its context and concept already existed in the previous 2015 edition. Specifically, since it was moved from the annex to the main body of the requirement, the content has been strengthened. Annex A63 outlines the specific requirement for the planning of changes which will have a significant impact on the organization. In particular, as you can see here, item H in this slide, business disruption could have a significant impact on the organization. This slide shows 6 key categories of unintended changes. I will omit the individual detail. However, all of them are common risks that can severely affect any organization. Essentially, the new edition of ISO 40001 requires organizations to build the capability to anticipate, absorb, and manage ongoing changes. Organizations that master this well not only survive, but will turn changes into a driver for strengthening their sustainability. The final topic focuses on environmental due diligence in the supply chain. Annex A81 describes example of control on external provided processes, products, and services. To ensure these issues for supply chain management, the concept of due diligence becomes essential. As you know, environmental due diligence is the process of identifying and evaluating environmental risk in your corporate activities, especially within M&A and supply chain. It's not just about finding the risks, but also about taking the necessary steps to mitigate them. Today, with global expansion and frequent M&As, managing environmental risk across the entire supply chain is more critical than ever. For instance, rising concern over groundwater and soil contamination, especially from PFOS and P4, are making corporate responses much more complex. Under these situations, we must deeply understand and prepare for environmental due diligence. The upcoming revision will be a major driver to strengthen these efforts. Before concluding, let me summarize 5 key points regarding the impact on the organization. First, environmental condition helps the organization deepen context analysis to discover new business opportunities. Second, the life cycle perspective enables the organization to evaluate Scope 3 environmental impact to build a stronger, more resilient supply chain. Third, sustainability reporting ensures the organization prepare early for mandatory sustainability disclosure. Fourth, managing unintended changes helps the organization build the muscle to handle unplanned real-world disruptions. And finally, environmental due diligence allows the organization to address requirements for managing risk across the entire value chain. Together, the revised ISO 40001 provides a single, coherent framework to respond to the sustainability agenda of our future. Finally, let me wrap up today's presentation. As I have presented, ISO 40001 provides substantive guidance for fortifying the organization's overall sustainability. This revision looks like a simple update. However, the organization should make the best of use of this as an excellent opportunity to improve their sustainability. Moreover, this revision offers a valuable opportunity to reassess the organization's past initiatives. More importantly, it lays the groundwork for new environmental activities, moving the organization's sustainability effort forward. Ultimately, this revision is the perfect opportunity for organizations to turn this impact into their growth. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and kind attention today. It's been a great, real privilege to spend this time with you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Yamada-san. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your presentation. And I know we have already several questions, Tatiana.
Yes. Let's start with the first one. The world is facing significant environmental issues now, even after 20 years of ISO 14001 publication. How do you think this new version will better support the environmental protection of this planet compared to the previous versions?
Perhaps Yamada-san, I would give this one to René. René, do you think?
It's a question which frequently comes up. I would address that to say one of the directive of the revision is clarification, because users did understand and perceive the requirements in different manner. And in order to make the intent of a requirement much clearer, by the way, Mamoru has very well explained how you should look at these things as well. This, of course, will help that the user do the right things. And for audit and assessment, it's much easier to say, yeah, did it really use the right way? So it will have an impact, and the impact will be on environmental performance. And I think that's the answer.
Yep.
Great, thank you so much. Then the next question for Mr. Yamada, considering that the changes are not substantial, can the certified organizations make use of this opportunity to further improve their environmental management systems? And if yes, in what aspects?
Okay, as I mentioned in the slide, this revision seems no major changes like 2015 edition. However, this revision could realize an excellent opportunity to brush up ISO activities. For example, some organizations have narrowed their ISO effort to only reducing electricity use or cutting down on copy paper, leaving little room for broader environmental initiatives. For organizations in such a situation, this revision can serve as a valuable chance to expand and enhance environmental activities in a more meaningful way. I explained in this presentation, the organization could explore new business opportunities by making the best use of clause 4.1, 4.2, and 6.1, which correspond to risk and opportunities, which relate to environmental objectives and other elements of ISO 40001. The environmental management system of the organization will be enhanced and strengthened through their activities.
Can I add, Tatiana, an important point here?
Yes, please.
It's a little bit, in between gimmicks, it's a little bit difficult or dangerous to say no major changes. Formally, that's right. Mamoru explained you the opportunities. Each organization has a risk. When an organization has a mature system, they do not need to change much. They probably have all addressed already. But if the organization does not make its gap analysis, they have a considerable risk not to fulfill the requirements or not to be in line what certification bodies will ask them at the end. So look and make your analysis before you need, as a user, you need to be aware what this new standard means for you. Did you have understood everything correctly already? And then you can say, oh, I have to make no change or some change or major change. That would be the perspective to take.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the completion.
We are moving into quality and the revision of ISO 9001 and its impact. And for that, we have Gustavo Ponturiero. He's the IQNet official liaison to TC 176, the technical committee responsible for quality management systems, and especially to the subcommittee 2. Gustavo is the certification manager for management systems, foods, and personal competencies in IRAM, Argentina, also a member of IQNet. With an educational background in textile, he has been part of IRAM since 1993, holding multiple roles in both standardization and certification, and with more than 30 years of experience in the development, implementation of management systems. Gustavo has played a key role in advancing and supporting quality infrastructure at the national and international level. For nearly 2 decades, he has been actively involved with IQNet Association, where he has served since 2020 as Vice President and Chair of the Standing Committee Harmonization and Best Practices. I already mentioned this is our technical committee. His contributions to international standardization and accreditation include participation in the development of several standards, most notably 9001, relevant for today's proceedings, where he serves as the chairman of ISO Technical Committee 176 SC3, Subcommittee 3, and acting as one of the IQNet representatives to IAF and Global ECI Technical Committees. Welcome, Gustavo. Thank you for your availability. We're looking forward to understand the revision of 9001, process changes and impact on certified organizations. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Good morning for me, for everyone. I will try to make a brief presentation or a comprehensive presentation about what is going on with the revision of ISO 9001. As you, I think, mentioned that before, but the document now is not published, is still in the revision process. The FDIS, a final draft of international standard, is out for voting at the moment, and it will finish at the 9th of July, a few days, next week, to say. And after that, we will have some time to consider the outcome of this period, of voting period for the final draft. And then the committee will send the document to the ISO Central Secretariat to fulfill the changes. Maybe there will not be content changes. It will be more editorial changes after final DIS is not allowed to change the content of the standard. Will be some comments on the structure, on the formal issues, and after that, the Central Secretary will publish the document. I think the agreed date for that is mid-September this year. Perhaps will be. It depends. It will depend on the outcome of this period, but it will be published somewhere in September. Okay. What I prepared for today is a kind of brief presentation about which are the topics or the drivers for the revision. See global changes about the document, that the changes that are affecting the whole document, And then I will go through the clauses with requirements, and we will speak about conformity assessment, impact, and transition guidance for the companies. Okay. So as I mentioned, 9 July will finish the voting process, the voting period for this edition. This will be the 6th edition of the standard. We have the first edition in 1987. So this is a most old, I think, requirement standard in ISO, which has the most big certified community around the world. Pedro mentioned that was 1,400,000 companies certified, and to be honest, this is the most used standard, the bestseller standard in ISO and so on. So this said, I said this because this standard, with so big community behind, needs to be very carefully revised to avoid the negative impact in the whole market. Every change in the so used the standard has a big impact in the market and in the companies and in the way the standard will need to be followed for the future. So the committee is very careful to when the revision is open to make the right selection of changes. This time the decision, it was hard to decide to revise or not the standard. At the beginning, the surveys to decide if the standard needed to be revised or not say no, and then they started a little. It was half and half position, so they started a second round of surveys, and then we decided to revise the standard anyway, and the decision the design specification for the standard was to add the requirements only consider the high potential and low impact as possible. So why we the committee decided to revise the standard? Because mainly as in all the standards, the market is changing. The companies are not the same than 1987, not the same than 1994, not the same than 2000, 2008, 2015, that are the previous revision of the standards. So the business way, the way to do business for the companies is changing very, very speedy at this moment, and the business environment is one of the more important topics that were considered to define the revision. The sustainability and climate change was something that arose from ISO. It was an issue to be included in the standard. It was included previously by an amendment in 2024, but it needed to be included in the structure of the standard. The digital work and technology also are having a big impact in the companies at the moment, and is going to be more and more important in the near future with the incorporation of artificial intelligence and so on. And quality culture and ethics, it was something to be considered in the quality criteria for the future or for now to include as a requirement. So these four topics are the main drivers for the revisions. You will not find a 2026 standard different from 2015. It will only include several changes that include these issues, and a lot of changes also for the format or for the high-level structure or for the clarification in the concepts that were previously included in the document. So the global structural exchanges we have is in clause 3, which is the terms and definitions. There was nothing in the previous in the 2015 version, and the group decided to include 20 key terms in the body of the standard, just for make to the user more easy to find the definitions and terms used as a basis for the requirements. Sorry. Before, if you have doubt about the use of a term and a definition in the management system field, you had to go to the term and definition standard to buy another standard and to have a set of standards to understand how to proceed when you need to implement a management system. So we decided to include the 20 key terms in the body of the standard for clarification and so accessibility for the users. The committee also decided to split risks and opportunities in 2 different clauses. I will go deeper with this in the coming slides. The span of changes, planning of changes now includes 7 consideration versus 4 than before. So we expanded the 6.3 and we revised the annex, which is very important. René mentioned more or less the same for ISO 14001. And here in ISO 9001, we have an annex for clarification of the requirements. So in the annex now, you will find a clarification of the requirements in the content of the standard. So if you will have the clause 6.3, and you have the requirement in the document body, and in the annex you will have an explanation on clarification of which is the extent of this requirement. So we consider also very important to make to the user much more easy to use this requirement document with the extension of definitions and with the extension with an annex with the clarification for the interpretation of the requirements. This is one of the main topics to consider when we speak about the revision of the structural changes and format. And the annex A was removed and replaced with this one. So what is new in the concepts of what is reinforced as a concept inside the standard? Mainly, you will find quality culture as a new concept, a new explicit requirements requirement in 5.1.1i, and ethical behavior integrated in the leadership clause. Climate change was an amendment before, and now it's included in the body of the document. And opportunities-based thinking is something new that is coming from dividing risk and opportunities clause into risks and opportunities. And there is an issue also that affects all the look and feel of the document and have minimum and formal changes in the text of the standard, that is the alignment of the harmonized approach. There is a project in ISO which is called SMART, and it has the intention to make the standard machine readable for the future and for the artificial intelligence tools and so on. So ISO Central Secretariat asked to the technical committees to fit as much as possible for this harmonized approach. And in the past version of management system standard, they were aligned to the harmonized approach, but did not fulfill the step-by-step lines. They have lines in the middle of the defined general content and so on. So we need to reorder some text in the document to fulfill this requirement from the ISO Central Secretary. So you will find bullets and so on in different places of the text than before. So this is the picture to describe the main changes for the structural and the concepts you will find in the standard. So going inside the text of the requirements document, you will find in the clause 4 understanding the organization and its context. It was added the climate change issue that was stated in the amendment before, and the needs and expectations for interested parties requirement for now explicitly include which will be addressed through the management system. So it's not a change, it's a detailed change that needs some action from the users of the standard. The scope was clarified the wording and with the same intent, and the quality management system in 4.4 was added a new item to determine the processes needed and their application through the organization are now explicit. Now it was in the standard, but now they are written in an explicit way to clarify to the users and to state that this is a requirement needed to be addressed with, and the certification bodies will go for explicit evidence for this. This is what is it in clause 4. In clause 5, we have, as I mentioned before, a new concept inside, which is promote quality culture and ethical behavior. This is a kind of is written as a responsibility for the leadership. It's not a new requirements to transform in an operative way or in a big issue inside this quality management system, but it's something that need to be addressed by the focus of the leadership of this or in charge of the management system. So these new concepts are more or less the new two topics that are going to be addressed need to be addressed in the near future, and perhaps this will be the main work we will have as certification bodies to define how to audit these new topics. It was reordered in order to fulfill the high-level structure, the harmonized structure, promoting in the item J was promoting the use of process approach. It was implicit and now is stated in an item. Promoting key risk-based and opportunity-based thinking. It was changed because we are separating risk-based and opportunity-based thinking. The accountability for quality management system effectiveness was moved to another item, and we added a note: quality culture and ethical behavior define shared values, audited attitudes, practices, and actions. Also, in these issues, you will have very good information in the annex, as I mentioned before. So, was added a note to clarify the requirement that was included in the text, but is a note, okay, to clarify. Regarding quality culture as a new pillar, we have a shared values and attitude toward quality, ethical behavior, and all decisions and actions, top management accountable for fostering it. and reflected in awareness in 7.3, and influence work in work environment in 7.1. So we have some requirements here, and then we have some reflects in the management in the other classes of the standard to complete the management of this requirement. The policy and roles, we have a new item E that must take account context and support strategic direction, was combined with the item E in 2015. We have a new item E in 5.3, report improvement opportunities to top management. Was in 5.3C in 2015, and now is explicit in the E. So here you have a main topic related to quality culture and ethical behavior, and then you will find some reordering and new words in saying the same inside this clause. In clause 6, we have planning. This is the biggest change that, as I mentioned before, risks and opportunities are now separated, formally separated. So you need the user will need to have a management for risks and management for opportunities. And for both says determine, analyze, and evaluate the risk and the desired and undesired effects. Plan actions integrates into QMS quality management system processes. Evaluate effectiveness of action taken. New note includes risks during after disruptions and proportionate to potential impacts or intent results. And in 6.1.3, a new action to address opportunities is more or less the same, but the risks were undesired effects. Here is the side effects. Plan actions integrate to QMS process, evaluate effectiveness taken, examples, new practices, products, partnerships, technologies, and appropriate to context. So we have quality objects, we have manual update, and 6.3 plan changes was expanded with the new bullets. So in clause 7, we have a minor change with a new node. In organizational knowledge, we have some wording change in the text, but mainly the same. And in 7.3, we have a new item that states that the person shall be aware of the organization quality culture and ethical behavior related to the new issues before. And in the documentation, in the documented information, we have a minor also change that now is going to the language changes that available as evidence in 2015, and now is going to be said that retain documented information as evidence. It's more or less the same with different wordings. In 8, we have operational planning, control, customer communication, design and development planning, and design and development inputs. We have different items with different wording, but more or less the same content. We have a more important change in control and externally provided products and services, interaction with organization and, as applicable, its customers and other relevant interest parties, expanded the scope with the interested parties, and identification and traceability now structured in 4 explicit sub-items. Documented information for traceability is not explicitly required. So these are the 2 main changes in the clause 8, but it will be you will find these other 5 changes in the wording and in the order of the content. And in 9, you have analysis and evaluation. It was expanded for effectiveness of risk and effectiveness and action taken for opportunities. And customer satisfaction is redefined as for an old definition that how customer perceive the organization ability to meet needs and expectations, their needs and expectations. So this is the more important analysis and evaluation change. And the chapter of internal audit was restructured also, but not so much new. Just a main a small remark here that is explicitly stated that you will need to define audit objectives, not only criteria and scope. And this, for management review, also you will find the risk and opportunities issue as a separate new bullets for the revision. And remain results was outputs. They changed outputs by results, and it was aligned. It was for alignment for the high level structure. There was a reordering, but the spirit and the intention remains the same. At the last, with improvement, there was a restructuring also for this different intention that put first the continual improvement. It was moved up and now leads the class. And after that, we have the corrective actions and non-conformities. This is a reordering. In the importance of the clause is considered very important for the user to have this clarification for the content and understanding of the requirements. So that's why the changes were proposed. So for the users, I can say that this is a rating, but it's not formal. It's just a thinking way, a way of thinking of the impact of the changes in the different clauses. Perhaps the user will need to work more in leadership and planning to readapt their management system to the new standard. The context support, performance evaluation and improvement have moderate changes related to reordering the text and new items, and we have minor less work to do in chapter 8 in traceability, structure, design and development in an interactive note. So this is kind of a picture of what will be the impact for the users. For the conformity assessment, auditing quality culture will be a challenge for the certification bodies and for the market. Also the ethical behavior will be with something that need to be worked by the conformity assessment bodies and the market. This is my last. For the companies, will be important to make a gap analysis, to update the leadership training because the main changes are related with them, and updated documents and internal audit updates. And that's it. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you, Gustavo.
The first one is everyone is now talking about quality culture. Contrary to what is usual, for example, on emergent topics as climate change or AI, Quality Audit Practice Group did not publish yet any guidance on how to address it. The new ISO 9011 also does not include any related guidance. Are there any recommendations to give to certified companies and auditors on this topic?
Yes, in this topic, there are two things I have to say. Auditing Practices Group is developing the two documents for that, but are not published yet. I think they will be published more near to the date of publication of the standard. And after that, I have to say also we have the 10,010, the standard 10,010, which is quality culture guidance for companies that also include self-evaluation methods and so on. If you need to, if the users need to have more information about the quality culture, they can find a lot of information in this guidance standard, which is 10,010. And related to ethical behavior, we don't understand. You don't ask about that, no? But it's more or less the same. The Auditing Practices Group is going to publish something together with the standard.
And then I will ask the last question. In your opinion, did we miss a good opportunity to promote a deeper revision of the standard? What was the feeling of the technical committee about it?
The feeling is divided. I think there are voices that this revision is not enough, and there are other voices that this is too much. So, somewhere in the middle, you always have the content related to consensus, and perhaps in some issues we didn't go so deep that we should, especially in the incorporation of technologies, new technologies, IA, and so on. But it will, for sure, will be included in the next revision. And there is a group of tendencies of emerging terms in quality management that is producing white papers and content for the future revisions of 9001 that are considering these issues.
Thank you. We move now to a look into occupational health and safety, ISO 45001 revision. And we have a distinguished speaker, Milo Serafin. He's our official liaison to the Technical Committee 283 that is revising the standard. Milos, until March this year, was the director of the Management System Assessment Department in SIQ Slovenia, Ljubljana, distinguished partner of IQNet as well. He's now the assistant director in the same department. At SIQ Ljubljana, he's the product manager for ISO 9001 and ISO 45001, and also a lead auditor for several schemes, quality management, environmental management, and also health and safety, occupational health and safety management. He began his extensive professional career in the industry, where he expanded his expertise in experience by performing occupational health and safety tasks. Among other things, he also served as an assistant director at a sheltered workshop. He then worked in SIQ Ljubljana, conducting product testing and noise and vibration measurements before moving into the field of management system assessments in 2005. Milos is also the author of several books, including The Risk Assessment is Complete, What's Next? Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems, and also Management Systems, Why and How to Integrate Them. So Milos, thank you so much for being here with us, and the floor is yours to explain the process and expected changes for ISO 45001. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro, for introducing me. Hi to everyone. My presentation, as you said, deals with revision of ISO 45001 standard. Let's go first to the presentation program of my part of this workshop. We will talk about the following topics: why the revision of ISO 45001 standard, what's new, what changed, and what stays the same, and in the end, some conclusions. But first, we should find the answer why the revision of the standard ISO 45001. As we all know, ISO 45001 is a global standard for managing occupational health and safety risks and helps organizations prevent injuries, improve safety culture, and compliance with regulations. Standard provides a structured framework that organizations of all sizes and sectors can use to manage risks and improve performance. As the world of work continues to change, ISO 45001 is being revised to ensure it remains relevant, effective, and aligned with the modern organizational challenges. The first edition of this standard was published in 2018. So now we are talking about the second edition. And this was time before the pandemic, which changed so many things. We all remember remote work and various forms of hybrid works have become the new reality. Then there is a digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and of course, climate change, as we all know nowadays in Europe. And all this introduce new risks to organizations, and organization shall manage all these new risks. For all of this reason, a revision was necessary, so the standard will continue to support organization achieving their goals in the area of occupational safety and health. And today we have, today we have a new draft version of standard of ISO 45001, and voting on this draft standard began in June and will end in the beginning of September this year. And what's new and what changed and what stayed the same? I will first start with what stays the same. So, what is the same? The standard does not change the structure of the standard, so the structure is the same as in a valid version. The scope of the standard is same, and certain requirements are also the same, like external communication and resources. If you now move to the part what is new and what is changed, I will not go through all changes. I will just highlight some. From my point of view, important changes. We can start with terms and definitions. Among terms and definitions, there are several new definitions and terms that already point to direction for changes to the standard. For example, work-related well-being and disability. If you go to the definition of work-related well-being, this is a fulfillment of workers' physical, mental, social, and cognitive needs and expectations as impacted by their work. And if you now move to not for a new requirement, but a change requirement, this is a context of organization. If we focus on this, we will find that organization shall take into account the diversity of their employees and other key stakeholders when identifying needs and expectations. This is, I think, a big new issue of this standard, and Annex A explains what an organization can do to take into account the diversity of their workers. For example, recognize that standardized approaches to occupational health and safety may not be equally effective or appropriate for all workers. If you now turn our attention to leadership, we will find out that more will be expected on the management. There will be a greater emphasis on leadership and safety culture. Management will bear greater responsibility for performance in the area of occupational health and safety. Like leadership, management shall promote the reporting of incidents, hazard, occupational health risk, and occupational health and safety opportunities. So it's maybe the same as is in new ISO 9001. And if we move now to a new requirement, this requirement is now aligned with ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 standards. It relates to planning of change. There is a strong focus on the change management, particularly when introducing new technologies and work practices in organization. And finally, we'll take a look at the two new requirements included in the standard. In Clause 8, Clause 8 includes two entirely new requirements, one concerning occupational health and the other concerning the return of employees to work following an injury or ill health. The organization shall plan, implement, and control process to protect workers' health. The importance of work-related well-being is increasingly recognized. The second requirement concerns the return of employees to work following an injury or ill health, and it's also organization shall plan, implement, and control process to support workers when recovering from injury or ill health. This is quite new requirement for this standard, and I think it's related to my starting point, the terminology and definitions. And maybe for the conclusion, if you take what standard offers to the organization, standard offers an opportunity to build more resilient organizations and create safer and healthier workplaces. Organization can improve their performance, foster a positive safety culture, and thereby protect their employees. However, they cannot do unless top management leads by example and through participation and consultation with employees. And probably the new edition of ISO 45001 will be issued in 2027. Thank you for inviting me to present this part of webinar.
Thank you, Milos, for a very comprehensive and straightforward presentation.
The first question is, with the introduction of close planning of changes, will management of change remain?
Yes, it will remain.
Okay, short and sweet, thank you. Next question, do you expect more changes to be introduced in the new 45001 when compared to what is noticed for ISO 9001 and ISO 45001?
So the standard as it stands now has been changed significantly. So from a recent edition, from my point of view, the draft standard is very well prepared, and I think there is more changes in 45001 if we compare this to 9001 and 40001. Yes. Because we have several new requirements in the standard, and we have a lot of changes in all other requirements. There is only a few requirements which are not changed.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, that is the question. At this time, I would like to ask for additional comments regarding protect the health of workers. So probably what is new.
There's an entire clause about protecting occupational health. So there's as I said before, the organization shall plan, implement, and control processes to protect the health of workers, including anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and control of hazards, prevention and early detection of ill health. So it's very important part. Access to occupational health services, including medical and preventive services and emergency care, and recognition of reasonable adjustment to meet workers' individual needs related to changes in their health or capacity that can affect workers' abilities to perform their jobs safely and effectively. So I think this part is connected to the context of the organization, where organization shall take into account diversity of workers. So we have old workers like me, we have young workers, and we should take, organizations should take into account this diversity of workers.
Last question. Though TC203, the committee in charge of revising 45001, is also producing a significant number of guidance standards on remote work, on risks arising from climate change, etc. It seems that there is no auditing practicing group as for other standards, like the quality. Any particular reason?
Maybe I will pass this answer
Yes.
question to Pedro,
Yes, thank you, Milos.
but maybe just my opinion. These
Yes.
guideline standards are very, very nice and very good for use in organization. This ISO Pass 45007 is really a good guidance how to deal with climate change. And Pedro, please.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we have several different APGs, audit practice groups, working for food, for quality, for environment, and also for health and safety. And I was also attending, I was actually the secretariat of the health and safety APG for some time. And what was decided is that the APG will start producing documents, the health and safety APG will start producing documents following the publication or when the standard is almost ready for publication. We are still in the draft that can be changed, can be subjected to changes in the future. So when the final draft is approved, and we are looking forward for the publication of the new 45001 2027, then the APG will resume their work. Thank you. Thank you, Milos, again. And the last presentation of today will be a kind of a summary and the right conclusion, I believe, to address some of the expectations, some of the questions we received today on practical dispositions and criteria for the certification transition process. And for that, we have the pleasure of having with us Bruno Galan. Bruno is the IQNet Standing Committee for Harmonization member, and Bruno is a quality manager of LSQA Uruguay. He's also a member of IQNet with more than 10 years of experience in auditing, certification, and conformity assessment. He's actively involved in international technical activities through IQNet and regularly works on matters related to accreditation, management system certification, and conformity assessment in general. His current role focuses on quality oversight, accreditation, and continual improvement on the certification processes. Like I said, Bruno is a member of the IQNet Standing Committee for Harmonization and Best Practices. Again, that's our technical committee, and actively participates in different technical groups, notably those who are focusing on accreditation matters, on IT issues, etc. Thank you, Bruno, for being with us today and letting us know a bit about practical considerations that are not addressed by global ECI and by transition documents, going a little bit deeper in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro, for the introduction. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. And during the next few minutes, I'd like to focus on the practical side of the transition process, and more specifically, whether these revisions, what these revisions means for certification bodies and for certified organizations, and how to prepare for those transitions in an efficient way. As my colleagues have been explaining, I like to say that these revisions are evolutionary rather than revolutionary this time. This does not mean that it does not imply significant work from the certificated organizations, but the management system model implemented should not change significantly. So,
can you move? You can move.
Yeah, thanks. This is just a summary of what we'll be covering today. We'll go through how certification activities are affected, how transition audits should be planned, then how certification decisions are managed, then competence requirements, communication with clients, and finally, a few key takeaways. Then, regarding the certification process itself, the publication of a revised standard affects much more than the audit itself. Certification bodies need to review their own processes, procedures, and documentations so that they are ready to audit against the revised requirements and comply with accreditation requirements. Within IQNet, we've developed a common consensus document to promote a harmonized approach across members, and today's presentation is based on that document together with global ACI transitions requirements. Certified organizations may also notice some administrative changes, such as updated contracts or references to the new edition of the standards, depending on each CB process. Then, talking about the transition audit itself. Every organization will need a transition audit. However, this does not necessarily mean an additional visit or additional audit. The transition can take place during a surveillance audit or during a recertification audit, or as discussed with this specific CB as a separate special audit. What changes in each of the audits is the audit scope. The auditor needs to verify how the organization addressed the revised requirements, whether changes to the organization's context have been considered, and whether any other parts of the management systems needed to be updated. Naturally, the exact scope depends on the audit type. During surveillances, only the planned surveillance scope is extended with the revised requirements. During a recertification, the complete revised standard is assessed. For organizations, the key message is quite simple. It's not just a gap analysis. The idea is to be prepared to demonstrate how the management system has actually been updated to the new requirements as a system again. Then, going now to the scheduling, and specifically around timing. As Pedro mentioned earlier, transition activities follow internationally agreed rules established through IAF, formerly AAF, now Global ACI. These rules define when certification bodies should begin transition audits, when certifications to the previous version is no longer allowed, and the final deadline for completing the transitions. At least for 14,000 and 9,001 transitions, the deadline is 3 years. That for 45,001, we can expect a 3-year transition as well, but we are yet to wait for the publication of the standard and the Global ACI document. These dates here, for example, are the example for 14,001, since we already have a publication date, because the 3-year cycle is from the publication date of the standard. So the standard was published in April 2026. So the transition period ends on the 30th of April 2029, 3 years after. We can start audits to the new version after a year of the publication. However, this is conditioned also by the accreditation body scope extension to the current CVs. And 18 months from the last day of the publication, no new initial certifications to the previous version can be made. That for 14,001 means October next year. After that date, all new certifications need to be against version 2026. Then, planning and conducting the transition audits. In practice, every transition should be planned jointly between the certification body and the certified organization. The plan should allow enough time not only for the audit itself, but for the reporting corrective actions, certification decision, and certificate issuance. In many cases, recertification audits are an excellent opportunity because they already cover the full management system. But not always this shall fit the organization certification cycle and business needs. So as Pedro mentioned earlier, it is very important that the certified organizations contact the certification body as soon as possible to be aligned regarding the transitions. When are they going to perform it? If they're going to perform it, for example, for an integrated management system, if they're going to perform that jointly or not. So this is something your CV will be able to address with you, and I encourage you to contact them as soon as possible to have enough time. Regarding audit duration, again, this is also something that has already been covered regarding whether transition audits automatically require additional audit time. And the answer is not necessarily. If the transition is incorporated into an existing surveillance or recertification audit, there may be little or no increase in the audit duration. However, certification bodies should assess each case individually. Factors such as the complexity of the organization, the maturity of the management system, integrated audits, and accreditation requirements may justify additional time. The objective is simply to ensure that the transition can be properly assessed and that the management system is correctly implemented. Then, certification decision. Once the transition audit has been completed, the certification body will make its certification decision. If the transition is successful, certification continues under the revised version of the standard. When the transition is completed during a surveillance or a special audit, the certificate will normally keep the same validity period. On the other hand, organizations that decide not to transition should understand that certification to the previous version will eventually be withdrawn when the official transition period ends, regardless of the expiry date shown on the certificate. That's why early planning is so important. This means the 3-year transition, despite the expiration date on the certificate, after 3 years of the publication of the new version, the old certificates will expire. Then, if this allows me, competence. Competence is a key topic for conformity assessment in general. And it's not just auditors, it's the whole process of conformity assessments. So before conducting transition audits, certification bodies must ensure that all relevant personnel are competent for the revised standards, including auditors, reviewers, certification decisions makers, etc. Accreditation bodies will also verify this competence. One of the tools used is on-site witnessing of the activities. So some organizations may be asked to accommodate observers during transition audits. This is a normal part of maintaining confidence in the certification process. Lastly, communication. Good communication is essential throughout the transition. Certification bodies should clearly explain the transition timelines, the process, and what certified organizations should expect. Communications can begin even before publication of the right standards. For example, we are talking regarding 9001 and 45001, but we need to be aware of these changes. At the same time, certification bodies should maintain impartiality. We can explain the requirements and the transition process, but implementation decisions remain the responsibility of each organization. And then, just to close up, some final remarks. The message is quite simple, as we have already been saying. Start preparing early. Review the revised requirements, identify what needs to change in your management system, in your context regarding your specific circumstances, and discuss the transition plan with your certification body in order to plan ahead. Early planning gives everyone more flexibility and helps avoid unnecessary pressure towards the end of the transition period. The transition should not be seen simply as replacing one certification with one certificate with another, but as an opportunity to ensure that the management system continues to be effective under revised requirements, and that it keeps complying with the standard. And that is it. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to answer your questions now.
So we'll start with the one in the chat. Once we are accredited for ISO 14001 version 2026, when is the earliest we can start conducting accredited audits against the new standard?
This is, this is the first thing that the question says. once we are accredited. That is, of course, the first step. But once we are accredited, after 12 months of the publication, we can start the transition audits to the new version. So it will be, of course, 2027. For 14,001, it's April 2027. For 9,001, it will probably be September or October 2027, but perhaps it's rushing. But after a year, so it gives time to the certified organizations to implement, to assess and implement the changes, and to the certification bodies to gain the competence they require to align the processes and everything.
But you are absolutely right, Bruno. But if, as you mentioned, if and when you are accredited, the certification body is accredited, they can start immediately, even if it's before the latest 1 month. So the trigger here is accreditation. If the certification body has received the transition of accreditation, they can start immediately.
Yeah, the standard is already valid and released. That's it.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro.
What are the key challenges organizations face in maintaining ISO certification with an integrated management system while implementing upgrades to multiple ISO management system standards released in different time moments? And what are the best practices to manage them effectively? If you remember, that was a question asked when Pedro was presenting, and we thought it's better for you to address it.
Yes, it is a challenge, of course, because many things are changing right now, as we are seeing. As Pedro mentioned also, he shortly covered this question also. There will be overlapping of the transition periods, and many changes of the different standards are towards the same objective. Sometimes some are not, of course, but there are many integration changes that enable a better integration. Also, as we said, as I said, at least the management system model underneath the management, these standards is the same. So it's an evolutionary change. So it's a good moment to review our whole system, to take this transition period to review our practices and implement and to do a transition planning itself by steps, by milestones, to be prepared for the audits and use the audit as an improvement tool, as we always say.
I think it's, of course, a very good question. The key is really the gap analysis. And this helps for you to understand what to do in the first step, but it helps you also to demonstrate to the, let me say, the certification body what you did, also how you identified change or update need for your organization. So it serves you in two ways. And in a management system, in an integrated management system, you have really integrated processes like, let's say, Clause 6.3, managing change. So probably you will have a process or rules how you deal with that. So, but once you have done the gap analysis, this applies to the integrated processes, if I may say so. But you have to be aware that you have also discipline-specific processes. I take an example. The 14,001 requests you to have for the planning of the environmental aspects, compliance obligations, and so on, which flows in the risks and opportunity, a process to show how you consider these points together. This is not, let me say, in a way, this is a process which is really typically specific for 14,001. But again, from the gap analysis, when you see, oh, something was not done the correct way from the earlier version compared to the new version, you have just to update this process. So I say again, the key is the gap analysis, and the key is to look at the annex text to understand really, did I do my job already good? Is my system mature, or do I have action need? That's really the key. And that's also, if this key is not understood, then you have bigger challenges.
And just as a minor comment, I totally agree with René, but also thinking it as a system, which are actually that, because some changes might impact some other clauses. For example, there might not be a change on internal audits, but if you change some other, you need to review your system, like use your system as a tool to implement the changes also. You do a change management. I mean, use the system itself for the transitions. That would be my advice.
I think we heard the different presenters, and I thank René, I thank Yamada-san, I thank Gustavo, Milos, and Bruno for their comprehensive presentations, and to let us understand what are the key topics in the transition, what are the hints and the tips on how organizations should face the impact of the revised standards, and what are we doing from IQNet and from the certification bodies who are members of IQNet to better assist organizations and to follow up with organizations and to support organizations in planning and conducting the transition audit as soon as possible. There were several questions that I've been answering about when should we transition, what is the best moment. It obviously will depend on in each case, but please, what Bruno said is fundamental. Start the communication with your certification body. They will get in touch with you, but also show some proactivity. Talk to them about when are you planning. Talk to them about the best moment. Talk to them about the changes you are undergoing, so that the certification body can plan a surveillance, a recertification, or even a special audit to conduct the transition in order to ensure that your certification will remain valid when the transition period is over. So I hope you found this guidance and the issues we discussed as relevant. I thank you all for attending. I thank again all the presenters. I hope to see you next time. Thank you, everybody.